If you ever find yourself driving south from St. Augustine, Florida, the road will eventually bring you to a lonely stretch of salt marsh and tidal waterways. Here, at the mouth of the Matanzas River, stands a squat, weathered stone tower, Fort Matanzas. To the casual visitor, it's a picturesque relic, a place to snap photos and enjoy the sea breeze. But for those who linger after the last ferry departs, Fort Matanzas is something more, a place where the past refuses to rest, and where the echoes of tragedy still drift on the wind. The story of Fort Matanzas begins long before the fort itself was built. In 1565, this inlet became the stage for one of the bloodiest episodes in early American history. Spanish forces, led by Pedro Menéndez de Avilés, captured and executed more than 245 French Huguenots, shipwrecked, exhausted, and defenseless. The Spanish, determined to wipe out their Protestant rivals, offered mercy only to those who converted to Catholicism or had useful skills. The rest were put to the sword. The inlet was named Matanzas, Spanish for slaughters, to mark the site of this grim act. Locals say the land itself remembers. On certain nights, when the fog rolls in from the Atlantic and the moon is just a sliver, you can hear faint cries carried on the wind, desperate, pleading, and in a language few living Floridians speak. Some say these are the voices of the Huguenots, forever reliving their final moments on these haunted shores. Nearly 2 centuries later, in 1742, the Spanish built Fort Matanzas to guard against British incursions. The fort was small, just a single tower with a handful of cannons and a garrison of 7 or 8 men. Life here was harsh and lonely. Supplies came by boat, and the men spent their days scanning the horizon for sails, their nights listening to the endless chorus of insects and the distant roar of the surf. It's no wonder then that stories of hauntings began almost as soon as the mortar dried. Soldiers spoke of strange lights moving through the marsh at night, and of footsteps echoing on the ramparts when no one was there. Some claimed to see shadowy figures standing watch at the parapet, their faces hidden beneath battered tricorn hats. Others heard whispered conversations in Spanish and French, as if the dead were still debating the fate of the living. One of the most chilling modern encounters happened to a park ranger named Luis. Luis loved the solitude of the fort after hours. He often volunteered for the late shift, enjoying the peace that settled over the marsh as the sun dipped below the horizon. But one evening, as he was locking up, he heard footsteps on the stone steps leading to the watchtower. Heavy, deliberate, and unmistakable. Thinking a visitor had been left behind, Luis called out, "Hello? The last ferry has left!" No answer. He climbed the steps, flashlight in hand. The footsteps continued, circling above him. When he reached the top, the ramparts were empty. The air was suddenly cold, unnaturally so, even for a Florida evening. Then, just behind him, a hand brushed his shoulder. Luis spun around, heart pounding. No one. But the scent of gunpowder and salt lingered in the air, and for a moment, he swore he heard someone whisper, "Por favor." Luis never volunteered for the late shift again. Not all encounters are so frightening. One morning, a family visiting the fort found themselves enveloped in a thick, silvery fog. As they walked the shoreline, they noticed 2 figures emerging from the mist. One wore the blue uniform of a French soldier, the other the red and gold of a Spanish officer. The men faced each other, swords drawn but unmoving, their faces etched with sorrow. The family watched in silence as the 2 figures slowly faded away, leaving only footprints in the wet sand. When they told a ranger what they'd seen, he nodded solemnly. "You're not the first," he said. "Some say the spirits of the slain French and their Spanish executioners are bound to this place, locked in an eternal standoff, unable to forgive or forget." The land around Fort Matanzas is dotted with unmarked graves. During the colonial era, disease was as deadly as any enemy. Fever swept through the garrison more than once, claiming soldiers and workers alike. With no proper cemetery, the dead were buried wherever the ground was soft enough to dig. At night, visitors have reported hearing the faint strains of a mournful song drifting across the marsh. Others have seen flickering lights, like lanterns, moving among the dunes. Some believe these are the souls of the unremembered dead, searching for the prayers and rites they never received. In recent years, Fort Matanzas has drawn the attention of paranormal investigators. One group, led by a medium named Celeste, spent the night inside the fort with cameras, recorders, and EMF meters. As midnight approached, the temperature dropped sharply, and their equipment began to malfunction. On one audio recording, a guttural voice can be heard repeating, "Pourquoi? Pourquoi?" Why? Why? In French. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the wall, and Celeste doubled over in pain, clutching her chest. Later, she described a vision of men kneeling in the sand, hands bound, as a sword flashed in the sun. "They're still here," she whispered. "They want to be remembered. They want to be forgiven." One of the oldest legends tells of a lantern keeper who served at the fort in the late 1700s. He was known for his kindness, often sharing his meager rations with passing fishermen and lost travelers. One stormy night, he vanished without a trace. Some say he drowned in the marsh. Others believe he simply walked into the fog and never returned. To this day, on stormy nights, a single lantern light is sometimes seen bobbing along the riverbank, moving steadily toward the inlet before disappearing into the darkness. Locals say it's the lantern keeper, still guiding lost souls to safety, or perhaps searching for his own way home. Despite its haunted reputation, Fort Matanzas is a place of beauty and resilience. The marshes teem with life. Herons, egrets, and dolphins play in the shallows, and wildflowers bloom among the dunes. But beneath the surface, the past is never far away. Rangers and visitors alike agree. As the sun sets and the last ferry pulls away, the fort takes on a different character. The air grows heavy with memory, shadows lengthen, and if you listen closely, you might hear the distant sound of drums, the clash of steel, or the whispered prayers of those who came before. So if you ever visit Fort Matanzas, take a moment to stand quietly on the ramparts. Look out over the water, where the tides have washed away centuries of blood and sorrow. Remember the stories of courage, cruelty, loss, and longing. And know that in this place, the line between the living and the dead is as thin as the morning mist. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, Fort Matanzas is a place where history lives on, not just in stone and story, but in the restless spirits that still walk its lonely shores. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. This has been National Park Mysteries.